Alright, so you guys knew this was coming. As soon as a new Akuma dropped, you guys probably thought, oh yes, VarietyJay is going to release a new worst to best Akuma, and you would be correct. So if you guys enjoyed this video, remember to subscribe to the video, guys. Alright, so since this is a Akuma tier list, I am of course going to be doing a quick Dokei tier list. Now, last time I actually included Dokei straight up into the actual Akuma tier list, but in this video, I'm going to be separating them and doing their own Dokei tier list. Now, if you guys aren't aware of why this is, Dokei are literally just dead Akumas, you know, spoken by Rel. That's kind of how it exists in Shindo Life. So they're technically Akumas, just, I guess, not anymore. But yeah, starting this off is going to be Dokei coming in third place as the worst Dokei in the game. It's probably the best for 1v1 fights, besides maybe, you know, the last one. It is a 1v1 eccentric, pretty much, bloodline in general. Now, the science ability does actually allow you to do some wacky things and do some bypass and stuff like that. It also was buffed, so now it's a dash, so it's a dash on the ground, so it's easier to hit and things like that. But, you know, the 1v1 potential doesn't really match how good it is in team fights, and I do think that overall, the use of this is pretty limited. Now, coming in second place in the Dokei tier list is going to be Xeno Dokei, coming in second just because of PvE, and that's it. I'm going to be putting in second because, you know, of course, this tier list is mostly PvP oriented, but I do incorporate a bit of PvE aspects to it. And Xeno Dokei is obviously going to be second place just for the PvE part. Absolutely terrible in PvP though. Now, coming in first place as the best Dokei in the game is going to be Bankai Inferno, aka Bankai Dokei. This looks absolutely stupid with his outfit, but you know, what's up? So, of course, guys, the first ability does carry this. It is a breakaway ability, and it's pretty much just an extra escape tool. The actual other abilities of Bankai Inferno are honestly trash. The Z-Spec does a lot of damage, but the chance of you hitting in an actual fight is very, very small. And why were you using Bankai Inferno mode in general when there's just better Z-Specs in the game? And the other abilities are just kind of like semi-stuns that aren't really that great. So the first ability is the only good one, but it is so good that, you know, not like the competition is fierce when it comes to Dokais, but it is the best Dokei because of it. Alright, so coming in 10th place is going to be the Sengoku Bloodline. I know so far this has been really weird. You're like, dude, none of these names have even started with Akuma yet. But yes, Sengoku is an Akuma by Shindo Life lore, so I am going to be including it. And, you know, funnily enough, it is last place. Now, Sengoku's abilities in general really are not that bad. It just happens that all the Akumas have something that is better than Sengoku. Because Sengoku has, you know, it has a counter. It has a stun. It has an iframe attack. It has a lot of good things, but the good things that it has aren't good, if that makes sense, you know. So it has, you know, it has a really, really high powered mode, but there's like it's very hard to explain. Sengoku has a lot of good things, but the good things it has are not actually that good. Like the idea of them is good, but I feel like the actual just like the fundamentals of the bloodline abilities are kind of outdated besides the counter. And the counter is quite literally, I'm pretty sure it's the single worst counter in the game. Not because the counter itself is terrible, just because, you know, they can actually easily escape the counter, and then it does either no damage or, you know, they could just immediately attack you afterwards. So I do think it's, even though the counters in general are really good, it is the best ability of Sengoku, and it's still really the worst counter in the game. Now, coming in 9th place is actually going to be Sriracha Akuma. Now, Sriracha Akuma is going to be in 9th because of the counter. The counter of Sriracha is the only good thing about it. Everything else is bad, but the counter is good. The counter is pretty much, it's a 0 end lag stun counter that actually has iframes attached to it now, so it's no longer a no iframe counter, which is actually pretty good. I actually use Sriracha counter from time to time if I'm looking for a counter like it. It's a very specific counter too, so there's not really much that are exactly like Sriracha. A lot of them have side effects attached to it. Sriracha is literally just a stun damage counter that you can throw into your bloodline slots. Very simple counter, very easy to use, and that's why I actually love the counter. The counter is also really, really good in general, but it's very predictable, so you got to use it sparingly. If you haven't already, hit the like button on this video, and maybe, just maybe, Injure Akuma will pop up in your bloodline tab. Alright, so coming in 8th place is going to be the original Akuma. Now, I'm not going to talk about this that much just because it is the basic Akuma. Now, the basic Akuma doesn't really have much going for it. I mean, the C-Spec is a damage stacking ability, so it can one-shot people if you have 3 or more. The third ability is it reverses their, you know, their controls, and it does a bit of damage. The second ability is the longest auto dodge in the entire game, but it's attached to Akuma, so, you know, there's that. And then the first move is a stun. Stun, damage, auto dodge, really, really basic bloodline in general. That's kind of all there is to say about it. And the coming to 7th place is going to be one of my personal favorite Akumas ever in the game, Ryan Akuma. Now, Ryan Akuma for a long time was kind of my go-to Akuma. I used it even before it became meta and things like that until it got nerfed. Ryan Akuma overall has always been a really wacky one as well. I used to be a Ryan Akuma hater, and then I actually used it and I started liking it, and that's just kind of how it went. I mean, the third ability, the iframes were removed mostly, but it still is a block break ranged ability. It's pretty okay. The C-Spec is an iframe, you know, chi seal ability. It also drains a bit of mode, which is pretty irrelevant because it's only 1,000 mode. I mean, like with the new mode system, you can like get that back within like 10 seconds. Not even 10 seconds, like 3 seconds, or even 0.5 seconds with asses sliding a log. But the other abilities of Ryan Akuma besides those really are not that great. The counter is one of the worst counters unless you're actually using someone that, if someone like does acid slide onto you, you can actually use this ability and it will trigger multiple times on them, and it does bypass iframes, which is a really, you know, it's a good thing because you can use this on people that are actually iframe attacking. So it is one of the better counters against iframes, but against anything else, they're just better counters in general. And I think VarietyJay is very deserving of 7th place on this list just because the abilities, they're old. I mean, they're very old abilities in general. I definitely think a lot of the Akumas need updates, and this is no exception to it, since the only genuinely good ability is kind of the counter. Now coming to 6th place is going to be Akuma, which was also one of my old favorites. Now Akuma recently, I would say it's a very mid bloodline, hence why it's going to be halfway through the Akuma tier list. Now Riser, guys, you guys can obviously see the first ability is probably the best ability of Riser. Even if you get attacked during it, it's kind of like a safety net move. The only issue with this move is that people can actually counter the afterwards ability. So if they run towards you, you could just pop a counter and then it'll hit them on their way back. There's also no iframes attached to the end of the move, which also makes counters even more effective against these guys. But I do think Akuma first ability is really good if you know how to use it correctly. I mean, the ability teleports you back at the end, so you don't have to worry about that. Also, if you dash into them, you can block break them after a stun, and it actually does keep you there and you don't get teleported back. Ember Entry also doesn't teleport you back. So I think Akuma is a very solid bloodline just because of the first ability. The second ability is a basic stun. It's also pretty good if you use M1 combos. Everything else is kind of trash besides maybe the mode C-spec, but even then the mode C-spec has ranged alternatives which are the exact same but better. Now coming to 5th place is going to be Satori Akuma. Now Satori Akuma, I do think it's a very mid bloodline overall, but it definitely has some things going for it. The C-spec can be used to catch up to people that are running away. Oh, and I'm lagging. And then the weapon spec is really good in general. It's one of the best weapon specs in the game. It's an iframe 15-second cooldown ability that does 80,000 damage maximum and guard breaks them from a ranged attack. So it's a really good ability in general. Not the best weapon spec, but one of the best weapon spec. Now the first ability is honestly pretty horrid. I would avoid using the first ability. It used to be really good, but then they made the AoE the size of a pea. The second move is a counter. Now this puts him into an air combo, so it's quite literally a worse Shindo Akuma counter. So I mean, there's that. And then the third move of Satori is pretty much Bankai stun. So I mean, Satori has a lot going for it, but I mean, it's a lower range Bankai stun. So Satori has a lot going for it, but I definitely don't think it's as good as the bloodlines above it for very specific reasons. Now coming to 4th place is going to be Shiver Akuma. Now, guys, I'm going to say this right now. I am a certified Shiver Akuma hater. I really do not like this bloodline in general. I think it's for, you know, I think it's for nerds. I think Ryuji Kenichi is the ultimate nerd bloodline, but Shiver Akuma is pretty high on the nerd list. It has a bunch of invulnerability attacks. It has a bunch of attacks that are just insanely long stuns. You can also troll your teammates with it by making the enemy disappear for like 10 million years. And if you don't know how to use Shiver Akuma correctly, it actually hurt you more than it helps you, because you have to keep track of the stun time that they're away for. You have to make sure you don't double stun. The counter, you know, makes them go away for a second, so it's kind of hard to hit them sometimes. Now, the best thing of Shiver Akuma is definitely the mode, since the C-spec, you know, it allows you to run away. So if you even get a chance to immediately use the C-spec, you're pretty much already good. You're out of the fight. You're safe. Probably extremely good for bounty players. Now that I think about it, probably one of the best bounty Akumas in the game. And then obviously the weapon spec has always been insanely good. It's a block breaking, you know, stun ability that is instant with a decently low cooldown and has iframes attached to it. But I am a certified Shiver Akuma hater. I think if you use Shiver Akuma, you're a nerd. But just because you're a nerd doesn't mean you're using a bloodline that's bad, I guess. But you're still a nerd. All right, so this wouldn't be an Akuma tier list without Bankai being in the top 3. I mean, Bankai Akuma's been in the top 3 Akumas since release, actually. But it has fallen a little bit from grace because mainly the second ability is a pretty good ability in general. It's still kind of known as one of the most simple yet one of the best stuns in the entire game. There's a reason why every single, I swear, I mean it when I say this, if you go into a public server, there will be someone using this. I'm not even lying. There will not be a single public server ever where you see someone not using this ability. This ability is used by quite literally everybody in every public server. Everyone's used this ability at least once. Since it's a long range, simple stun that place locks and it's AoE. I mean, it doesn't get much better. Also, the third ability does bypass iframe, so counters don't trigger on it, which actually is a big advantage now because it does do 60k damage that bypasses iframe. Pretty good. And then the C-spec is the exact same as Riser C-spec. Auto dodge is just an auto dodge. There's not really much else. Now, come to 2nd place is going to be the newest Akuma in the game, Indra Akuma. Now, Indra Akuma is going to be this high only because of the mode. Anything other than the mode is honestly quite terrible, but the mode is amazing. So going through the abilities, the first ability is a 2-hand sign attack that actually does stun them afterwards. It used to have 0 hand signs. I just want to put this out there. Indra Akuma was S+++ tier before they actually nerfed the first and second ability. They nerfed it after, you know, they showcased it in the video, so it wasn't actually released broken, but it was S++ tier in their showcase. Obviously nerfed it because S++ tier means it's too broken for the game. Now the second move is an instant stun, but it lacks a lot of range and it no longer blocks block breaks and stuff like that. So the lack of range makes this ability only kind of useful for either catching people off guard or extending very, very basic combos, because you know, it's very hard to use this ability effectively. I actually have to go out of mode to show you guys this. But the third ability is kind of just a general guard break ability. It's like Tengoku weapon spec. It does a lot of damage, as you guys can see, but it's kind of hard to hit on people in general. If they're blocking, you're probably not going to hit them on this. I mean, they're probably just going to be like, oh, he's using this ability that's 10 million startup. Dash to the right, and then it instantly misses, or they can double W dash out and stuff like that. But one thing that you can actually do with this stun is you could actually do this, and then boom, and then boom, it misses. You want to know why? It was a joke, by the way. It doesn't work. You want to know why? Because the stun is such a short range stun that it doesn't hit people even if you were like very, very close to them. So stun is very, very only good in very, very specific scenarios. Now, the mode is the coolest and the best part of Injure Akuma, and is the reason why it's going to be, you know, this high on the list. First of all, it only drains 25 a second out of the weapon spec, meaning you have the only raised block mode in the entire game that drains only 25 a second. So you get big M1s, you get raised block, which allows you to avoid a bunch of attacks. Like, you avoid a significant amount of attacks with raised block. It becomes very, very hard to kill you. Plus, you get a 15-second counter that is literally the first ability as a counter, which I'm going to be honest with you, I definitely feel that is probably what the first ability should have been. This ability is kind of what the first one should have been, and I definitely think the first ability should have been the weapon spec, if that makes sense. Not the weapon spec, the throwable. I think they should be reversed, and I think if they reverse it, Injure Akuma overall would be a better bloodline. But the fact it's attached to the mode really isn't an issue unless you're playing something like competitive Arena X, because it only drains 25 a second, so you know, it is what it is. And then the C spec is a ranged guard break high damage attack that pretty much it just does a lot of damage. Now, the weapon spec of Injure Akuma is the coolest thing of the mode, but unfortunately it's not that great. Pretty much you turn into a giant samurai spirit, as you guys can see, and it drains a ton of mode from you. It drains 300 a second, so you're gonna lose mode almost immediately. Not to mention the fact that I mean, like, this is very cool. You can't get block broken. You can use any ability in this. As you guys can see, I am using abilities. You also take less damage. It's just a really, really cool, you know, ability in general. Now, they will be reducing the mode drain in the future, but for now, it is a very, very, very high mode drain, making this ability almost borderline unusable. It should only be used in very specific cases where they're either about to die and they just keep stunning you or running away, or you're about to die. That's kind of the only cases that you're going to be using these in. And even if you're in those cases, they're generally going to be better abilities to use. But this mode is insanely good with the counter, the raised block, big M1s, and the mode drain. But other guys, what is your favorite Akuma in Shindo Life? Leave them in the comments below. We'll be checking them out. Now, coming in first place is going to be the #1 certified nerd user bloodline. If you use Shindo Akuma, you're a nerd. And yes, I use Shindo Akuma, so you know that says something about me. Shindo Akuma right now, I mean, it's always been good, and it still is good. They tried to nerf the counter, but you actually just put him into an air combo afterwards. It's a really weird nerf. I mean, you put him into an air combo, so I mean, it's kind of weird. I think Satori Akuma also does the air combo things, and in general, it's a really weird counter now. The nerf was just making it into a normal counter. The clones are still there in case it fails and things like that. So even if they don't trigger this, the clones are there. So it's kind of a safety net counter. Probably one of the best counters just because it is a safety net, because in case you actually you don't actually use it on them, it still acts as a counter afterwards because the clones still get summoned. Now, the other abilities of Shindo Akuma are honestly kind of mid besides the mode. The second ability is a basic damage stun. Third ability is a basic place lock stun. Doesn't last that long. Less than Injure Akuma stun. But this mode is what carries it to first place. Guys, this weapon spec, I don't understand why people kind of hate on this weapon spec. This weapon spec is actually legendary. Not only that, but Shindo Akuma is also really good for PvE content too. Probably the only Akuma in the entire game that is good for PvE content, so that's kind of cool. But yeah, with this weapon spec chi seals for like 10 seconds. It mode drains them. It also drains chi from them as well, and it drains a lot of chi. Sometimes it bugs out and drains your entire chi bar, and at that point you pretty much instantly lose unless you pop like an Ember entry to run away or something like that. But even like, I just think Shindo Akuma is just one of those things that people kind of hate on for it's kind of just like, oh, Shindo Akuma, that's overused. And you know what, I'll be honest, Shindo Akuma is overused, but that doesn't make it bad. I definitely think the first ability in the mode definitely carries this bloodline to being #1, but it's very close with #2. I'll say that, because #2 does have a lot of advantages as well. But I think Shindo Akuma being good for PvE and PvP content, it makes it generally, like, I do think this is an S- tier bloodline, if not S tier bloodline, just because of the mode and the Q spec. And Indra is probably A+ tier right now, just because of the mode. Now, Injure Akuma was an S tier bloodline in the showcase. It was actually S+++ in the showcase, but they did nerf the second ability. It no longer has a guard break attached to it. First ability is no longer instant, so those two nerfs kind of absolutely butchered the moves, but the mode is really good. Anyways, guys, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed this video, remember to subscribe, guys. Bye-bye.